Good evening, folks. This is Jay from Cold Nights, and you are listening to the Cold Takes podcast. Tonight, we have two very special guests. Our first guest is Mongunzoo, and he is somewhat of an independent game journalist, or at least that's what I call him. He's got a wonderful website, and he's got some great opinions and reviews on it. So I'm going to throw it over to you. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, sir?
Well, yeah, I'm Mongunzoo. I write for Flipping the Switch, which is a kind of an independent backlog blog. Essentially, what I'm doing is slowly working my way through over 300 physical Switch games at this point, and just trying to give them a write up based on my experiences and based on perspectives that I view the game. When we play games, I feel like we all kind of bring our own perspectives based on the experiences we've had, books we've read, etc. To bear when we do that, and just trying to kind of do that. It's a very personal project, but it's one that I enjoy when I find the time to get it done.
Good deal. So I will tell you guys, I've known Mongunzoo for a couple of months, and we've chatted back and forth on Twitter and YouTube, and he is one of the most knowledgeable, intellectual guys in this little gaming community we have. If you want to know anything about the behind the scenes history of Nintendo or video games, he's your guy to talk to. So he's a great resource for knowledge, and we're going to have a great time with him on the show. Caesar, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing well, Jay. Thank you for having me on.
Good deal. So in case anyone missed your big appearance last time, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, everybody. I'm ScorpioCesar from the C's Arcade. I am action figure extraordinaire, video game collector, figure king. Jay, you were much better at this than I am. Help me out here.
I had quite a few. I'm trying to remember what they were.
Yeah, oh, Figure Lord or something like that.
Yeah, that was a good one. Like there was Figure Lord, there was the Toy Tycoon.
Yes.
Good stuff. So again, a little of my opinion on this guy. This dude has legit one of the most extensive, all right, it's not just extensive, all right, I know a lot of people that have great toy collections, but honestly, they look like shit. They're all thrown together, they're all dusty, there's no rhyme or reason to them, there's no, other decor or lighting. If you watch his videos, rebuilding the game wall and his room tours, this guy has put together one of the most chill, like atmospheric man caves you could have. So if you haven't, for some reason, checked out his content, I really suggest you do, not only for the games, but the incredible display he has of all his collectibles. So with that being said, with both of you introduced, let's get down to the brass tacks here. So this show was originally going to air with Andy and Mongunzoo. Unfortunately, he was not able to make it tonight. So Caesar was nice enough to fill in for us. And we're still going to kind of follow that same train, though. So what we want to talk about to begin the show is Breath of the Wild. Now, this is obviously a very relevant subject because we have Tears of the Kingdom coming down the chute very shortly. And that's already kind of a hot button subject. There's a lot of people that think the game is going to be tremendous and is going to change things for the video game industry. And there's other people like myself that think the game is going to be mediocre at best and will probably disappoint a lot of us. So I'm going to throw it to each one of you individually to tell me what you think about Breath of the Wild and then Tears of the Kingdom. And then we're going to have a little bit of a debate and discussion on it. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Mongunzoo. Let's hear your feelings on the original release of Breath of the Wild.
Well, I was there for day one on the Nintendo Switch. I actually got my Switch at midnight at a local Walmart here, took it home, got to playing it. And I got to tell you, it literally brings me back to the magic I haven't felt since the first couple of Zelda games. If we wind the clocks back, one of the things you see with the original Legend of Zelda is an absolute, very large swath of freedom. Same with its sequel, Legend of Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. While kind of different for a sequel in many ways, it really did hold fast to that feeling of openness, being able to sequence break, being able to kind of go where you want. Very, very interesting games that kind of solidified my love for that particular type of game. Then you get to A Link to the Past, and I love A Link to the Past, but things always kind of start to go off rails when they're still good. And so that's when you start to see a lot more linear gameplay. You start to see kind of the more emphasis on puzzles instead of just kind of battling through a hostile world, interacting with NPCs. All these things began to happen more and more, to the point where I actually didn't move on from the SNES for years. I didn't have any of those new systems. Ocarina of Time did not sell me on a N64. Wind Waker did not sell me on a GameCube, and vice versa. It wasn't until the Wii again that I got to try Twilight Princess and got to try Skyward Sword, both of which I felt honestly were, one was just very empty, and missed opportunity. The other is a game that I just could not get into, and both just probably a 3-hour long tutorial, it seemed like, at least to me at the time, to where I just couldn't get into the meat of the game because I was doing all of these fetch quests for the contemptible citizens of Hyrule, that having me fetch their slippers or clean their house, and I just want to go be a hero. That's to me what the kind of the basis of Legend of Zelda is. Once I was scared of this, now I'm not. I got back to that with Breath of the Wild. The opening moments of Breath of the Wild, the plateau where you're fighting for your life and you're having to use survival elements and elements of surprise, and your enemies have outmatched you. First time you run into a guardian, it just zaps the hell out of you. These are all moments that just brought me back to that original heyday of the Legend of Zelda 1, and I couldn't be more grateful for it. Yeah, Breath of the Wild has its problems. It absolutely does. Well, I'm sure we're going to get into that, and I'm sure I'll find many points of agreement with you guys, actually. But in terms of its impact on, the fans Nintendo left behind as this series continued onward, I don't think that impact can be understated, which is why it's, of course, probably sold, I think, triple what the rest did. Now, of course, we'll get into population growth, things of that nature, but even accounting for that, it is tremendous sales. It has not only picked up those old Zelda fans, I feel, but also picked up the many, many new fans as well.
So do you think that Tears of the Kingdom is going to build on that return to form, or do you think it's going to go off the rails?
I'm skeptical. Never underestimate Eiji Aonuma's ability to screw something up. So I'm actually quite skeptical that it'll capture that magic. But again, we'll get into that. I want to hear what you guys think as well before we get into that. But yeah, not as much as I love Breath of the Wild, I'm not quite as sold on Tears of the Kingdom yet.
Will you be picking up Tears of the Kingdom on day one?
Probably, if I'm being honest, yeah. But will I get to it on day one? I don't know. It just depends. I've got a hell of a backlog.
All right. So some fair points there. So Caesar, tell me about your relationship and opinions with Breath of the Wild.
Well, I should probably preface my opinions on Breath of the Wild by stating that I was never really a big Zelda guy to begin with. So my views are probably going to be a little warped here, and Mongunzoo, don't take offense to anything I say about Breath of the Wild. We both have different experiences with Zelda here. I'll be honest with you, I've never really played the original two. My first Zelda game I believe I played was Minish Cap, and that was a demo.
Okay.
I have and played most of the Zelda games. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate the series at all. It's just a series that I got into really late. The first Zelda game that I actually got into and completed was Ocarina of Time 3D. So let's just put that into perspective. You know what I mean? So I didn't really play A Link to the Past. I didn't play Link's Awakening that much. I barely touched the first two. And I skipped out on Wind Waker. I played a little bit of Wind Waker HD, but I don't know if it's my ADHD or something, but once I start playing them, I kind of get distracted and then I shelve it.
What a shocker. You're not missing much.
Ocarina of Time was the only one I completed, and I felt like I did it out of obligation. So when I got Breath of the Wild, at first I was like, holy crap, this is huge. This world is absolutely enormous. But then as I was playing through the game, I started realizing some of this world is just empty. Like I felt like I get why story wise most of the world was barren and empty, but at the same time, having played a bunch of like open world games, I just felt like it was a bit lacking and things to do and people to like interact with. And I don't know, it's just like the weapon degradation system is I'm not a fan of. I'm sure a lot of people agree with me on that. Uh, and then the, the lack of dungeons, like I like the shrines. Don't get me wrong, I do like the shrines in Breath of the Wild and how they kind of like mess with the physics of the game. But I don't know, it's just like I felt like the dedicated dungeons from some of the other games, the previous games, were, I don't know, for me preferable. Um, Honestly speaking, I haven't completed Breath of the Wild because I just lost interest halfway into it.
All right. So
Sorry to be a buzzkill.
I don't think you're a
no.
buzzkill at all. I think you make good points. And kind of go over that. I guess my first question to you would be, what are some of the other open world games that you played, and that may influence why you feel Breath of the Wild is so empty?
I've played Shenmue.
Oh gosh, that's a
Played.
great example.
I've fallen in love with that game recently. Shenmue, The Witcher 3, I got really into. I
Okay.
love that game. Skyrim, I've bought 3 times, still haven't finished it. So I've played all these open world games. There's Grand Theft Auto, but that's completely different. But it's
Right, a
still
little bit
open
different.
world. Yeah.
Right.
But I feel like those games, there's always something to do. There's always something to tackle. There's always a side quest to do. With Breath of the Wild, it's a bit more subdued with how it tackles like activities and side quests, or maybe I'm just not finding them. But
Are you a completionist by nature?
no, sir, not at all.
Okay, good to hear. I was going to say one of the things I constantly run up to when people kind of don't quote unquote get Breath of the Wild,
Mhm.
and I use that word very loosely. I'm not an advocate of, well, if you didn't enjoy a game, you didn't just get it, because that's what I was told as a Zelda fan for 20 freaking years.
Yeah.
Was well, you just don't get Wind Waker. You just no, I don't. I'm sorry, I don't care for it. It's not that I don't get it. It's not my jam.
Mhm.
So I use that word very loosely when I say people that don't get Breath of the Wild. Oftentimes they're completionists, and one of the things that clashes with that mentality is Breath of the Wild. If you're a completionist in Breath of the Wild, you enjoy hunting those Koroks. You're going to have a miserable time. I don't think I did very many of those. Honestly, on future runs, I actually skipped a couple of the dungeons, quote unquote. I think that's a completely fair criticism. In my opinion, Breath of the Wild only had one dungeon, and that was
Mhm.
Hyrule Castle at the end of the game, and it was phenomenal. That was a phenomenal experience, kind of traversing Hyrule Castle, all the different rooms, the hidden doors, combat focused. The battle getting to Ganon was incredible in that game. But I agree with you on the puzzle dungeons. I think the puzzle dungeons were absolutely empty, void of life. Um, I liked the shrines, but they were not a substitute for actual more Hyrule castles.
Right.
I think that's a fair point. I think the problem with the weapon system, I actually don't have a problem of the weapon breaking in and of itself. But the problem is I can see where it would be frustrating initially and absolutely redundant later on when you've collected like 6 Royal Guard swords or whatnot. And then what's the point of the breaking weapon system when you're carrying 6 or 7 of those around with you anyway? They have high durability. They knock stuff out and record flat. So I think Breath of the Wild has the issue of balance where at the beginning, I love the beginning. It's very, very hard. But as time goes on, and actually very quickly, the power of the player scales up to the point where the challenges become very, very minuscule. Till of course you get to like a Lionel or something like that, but those are one-offs. You don't have enough enemy variety. I think I would add that into the critique. Where's the Dark Nuts? Where's the Iron Knuckles? Where's Redeads? I think one thing Tears of the Kingdom seems to be addressing is that. But in general, I think all those criticisms are very fair, and I could see where that could put people off from the game. The emptiness of the world. Yeah, again, thematically, I get it as well, but I can see that as a criticism too. But really, the main joy in Breath of the Wild is just kind of, you know, doing things at your own pace. Do you want to do shrines? You can do shrines. Do you want to do you want to go and hunt Koroks? Well, knock yourself out, I guess. Do you want to go straight for Ganon and fight Ganon in the game right there? You can. It is thrilling, by the way. if you've never had an opportunity to do that.
I tried that and failed miserably.
Oh, it's you got to be on your game. You got to be on your game.
Yeah.
But so the freedom and emphasis on the world, I think it's a great blueprint. I would love to see it expanded on, and I sure hope they do.
So, Caesar, how do you feel about Tears of the Kingdom? Do you think it's going to improve upon the situation, or do you think it's going to be more of the same?
Well, judging from the last trailer, it looks like it's just going to be more of the same. But I don't know. I feel like the first few trailers that they did release, where there was like very little gameplay, what they did show looked promising. I could see it looks more of the same, which if you're a fan of Breath of the Wild, it's not a bad thing. But for me personally, I don't know. It just doesn't look like enough for me. Granted, that could change in the next trailer. Maybe they'll show more of what I'm looking for in a Zelda game. But me personally, I'm not really too excited about it because I haven't even finished Breath of the Wild 1. So,
all right. So I'm going to throw my 2 cents in here, and this is all actually going to relate to Dynasty Warriors. So I will come out and say that by far the most time I've spent in the Zelda universe has been on Hyrule Warriors, and then
oh yeah,
Age of Calamity. And when we talk about Hyrule Warriors, we're talking about 300 or 400 hours. The definitive edition had the characters cap levels at 255. So you literally could play infinitely. And I did. And my first point is I did so as Zelda. I don't know how long we have been asking Nintendo to let us be Zelda. I always wanted to be a princess growing up, and Zelda is my opportunity to be a badass sword-wielding princess. And I did that for probably 100 solid hours just on her in the definitive edition, and just on her in Age of Calamity. What I loved about Age of Calamity is the one thing that I find of value in Breath of the Wild is the incredible story, specifically the story of the Guardians, and the tragedy of the fact that Zelda was unable to fulfill her role, and that's what brought tragedy to that world. So that's my first point, all right, that they need to let us play as Zelda, and I still see no indication in the trailers that that's going to happen. So my second point is, if you are a fan of Dynasty Warriors, I don't know if either of you played Dynasty Warriors 9, but we were promised by Tecmo Koei an open world, incredible Dynasty Warriors to end all Dynasty Warriors. And we got a big old empty world where you would travel for 5 minutes to get to the location, or you could fast travel around. But when I think about it, I would rather have played Dynasty Warriors 7 or 8, where all of the NPCs that you need to start quests with or do things for were just in your camp. Because literally, right, probably the same amount of activity in NPCs fit into a city as did the entire open world. And that is very much the way that I view Breath of the Wild. That it is massively beautiful and open, but empty. It is the Great Plains. And for me, it's deceptive, because that was one of the great big things they promised, is that we were going to have this wonderful, incredible open world, and to me, nothing came of it. I definitely agree with the dungeons. I definitely agree that the last was epic, but the rest of it was void. But I very much see these parallels with Dynasty Warriors, and to the point where, as someone who's entrenched in that fandom, most people that are talking about the sequel, when 10 finally comes out, we don't want an open world. I want to go back to having all my activities be in the camp. And that reminds me a lot more of Ocarina of Time, where though it wasn't all just centered in one place, you basically had the field and there was 5 or 6 points of interest on the edges of it, and that was the extent of it. Everything else was instance or a dungeon, and I think that worked more for the series. So that's where I stand on it. I'm not even going to buy Tears of the Kingdom, and it has nothing to do with that $70 price point, though that annoys me to no end. I'm just not interested in it. And I'm not even going to say that I'll pick it up when there's a sale. Maybe I'll get it in the future, but I really doubt it. It's not really something I'm interested in, and I'm not currently in the process of completing like the North American Switch collection or anything. So it might be something I'm going to have to pass on, and it really kind of makes me sad because I know that all of my friends will be talking about it, and it's kind of a conversation that I'm not going to be able to be in without kind of being a Debbie Downer and starting like another Twitter like flare up. But
how dare you not play
so
Tears
sad.
of the Kingdom?
Yeah, so sad, so sad that Twitter weirdos are like that.
But that's where I stand on it. What are your thoughts?
Well, Nintendo has the emphasis to get your dollars. Only the customer has a right to be selfish. If you don't want to buy the game, you know, that's on them to give you a game that is worth buying. You know, they got to make games for everybody. And I think some of your critiques would work. It's a sense of scale to me. One of the reasons why open world games, one of my favorite open world games of all time, I talk about it all the time. I'm sure you've seen the posts. It's the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind.
Mm-hmm.
And Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, now I'm sure that walking from Saint Denis to Balmora in real time would take a full day. But they scale the time down. They also scale the space down. It's a scaled down version of what that actual world would be. And that's done specifically for gameplay purposes. I think the Breath of the Wild map could have been smaller, and still would have been massive. I think it could have been smaller. That said, I do want to emphasize just when you do find things, man, some of the open world quote unquote dungeons there, you got a whiz robe kind of floating around platforms. You've got a whole dragon literally climbing up a mountain, which is really cool. The dragon content. Did you guys ever find the dragon in Breath of the Wild?
Oh, can I just? Are you talking about the dragon that's like diving in and out of the water and just?
Yes.
I have to give Breath of the Wild credit here.
Yes.
When I saw that in the distance, I was instantly flabbergasted. I was just like, what is that? I want to get closer.
That's the feeling. That's the feeling.
I have to give Breath of the Wild the credit there because it actually made me feel something when I saw that dragon.
It certainly has lows, but oh my gosh, there are times where you're just like, this game, man.
Yeah, but that moment that you're talking about, right? When I go back to November and December when I was playing Elden Ring, that is pervasive throughout the whole world all the time. You come across it and you're like, holy Christ.
Well, Elden Ring has changed the open world game. Elden Ring was another neutron bomb on the open world game space. So again, I want to be fair here. We're comparing a game from 2017 to 2021. Elden Ring built on what Zelda did. It also built on what games like Dark Souls. By the way, I will stand Dark Souls forever. One of my favorite games of all time. It built on a lot of those games, and I would say, and that's another thing for Tears of the Kingdom, that, you know, my question to Nintendo EAD is, what is your game going to bring to the table that ups the ante on Elden Ring? And held to that standard, I'm not sure if Tears of the Kingdom passes that test. Whereas Breath of the Wild, you could argue, definitely brought something new and innovative and really interesting to the open world space. We live in a world of post Elden Ring world now.
Well, I certainly hope that they learn something from it.
Oh gosh, such a good game.
Like I can only imagine, Nintendo licenses and characters in that kind of immersive universe that they created there. That would be something truly special.
Well, now keep in mind though that Elden Ring 2, one of the few criticisms you'll actually see leveled at Elden Ring is that it's also in many places very empty. And again, I think once again there's another world that could have been shrunk a little bit. But oh gosh, yeah, the content that's there, the enemy variety, and full disclosure, Dark Souls essentially became my Zelda stand-in for a long time. It was the Dark Souls series became my Zelda stand-in. It was essentially what I felt like I was missing in a Zelda game all along. Was a very combat focused, open, quasi open world, and so you can imagine what a thrill. I was in like a candy land going through Elden Ring.
Yeah, it was a very special experience. I was not really huge into the Demon Souls or Dark Souls, but Bloodborne was what introduced me to that, and
Oh,
I was obsessed.
I've yet. Would you kill me if I said I've yet to play Bloodborne because I just don't have the systems? But
oh my
I
gosh.
hear it's incredible.
It
You need
was,
to play Bloodborne.
I used to be a platinum trophy hunter, and that was one of the few that I felt accomplished getting. And the funny
Mm.
thing is, looking at the completion percentages, it's actually incredibly high because the only people playing that game are people that are likely to try. Like no casual gamers like, shit, I'm gonna try Bloodborne today. So when you look at the platinum and you're like 20%, that's like a Mickey Mouse game. No, that's 20% of hardcore gamers. So it's still something to feel really good about. But yeah, I mean, I adored it, and Elden Ring brought that kind of storytelling, and that
Ooh, okay.
it was just incredible. But the focus on the Eldritch for me was the huge draw for Bloodborne.
You a fan of Lovecraft?
Huge, huge,
Oh, we're gonna have to talk
huge, huge,
sometime.
huge. We'll have to have a Lovecraft episode. But we're getting close to the first half here, so we're gonna go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, we're gonna kind of switch rails a little bit here and talk about all the stuff that we think Nintendo's doing right. So we'll be right back shortly.
Don't forget to tune in to the Retro Revolution. You're watching the Retro Revolution.
All right, we are back, folks, and tonight I am here with Mongunzoo and ScorpioCesar. And the first half of the show, we had some great cold takes on Breath of the Wild and what we thought about Tears of the Kingdom. And now we're going to get into Nintendo in general and how Nintendo is winning the console wars and how it's shaping up for the future. So I'm going to start off this segment by kind of talking about what I think Nintendo's strongest trait is. And to me, that's their marketing, knowing their audience, and knowing who is just behind their audience, and knowing the overlap between them. So I made a couple Twitter posts in the last couple of days about things that I was excited for from the Direct, and I purposely made them not the popular titles. No, I wasn't being dishonest or disingenuous. I really am interested in Fashion Dreamer. I really am interested in Samba de Amigo. But that is where my point lies. So I am a guy that platinum Elden Ring, that platinum Bloodborne, that loves shooters, that loves games with a high difficulty rating. But there is an overlap, and I think Nintendo has realized this. So no, when Nintendo puts out games like Samba de Amigo or Fashion Dreamer, they know that those games are going to target the unusual demographic. They're going to target possibly younger girls, people that are not normally gamers, much like they did with a lot of the stuff on the Wii and a lot of the innovations in games that were present in the Wii. But the thing is, you'd be surprised how many Call of Duty veterans loved the hell out of Wii bowling. How many hardcore gamers loved Home Run Derby in Wii Sports. How many of these people love Mario Golf or Mario Tennis? And we're not going to get into the quality of those games and their lack of content, but the overall gameplay is fun. And they're not traditional gamer games. So when I think of something like Samba de Amigo, which is a super cutesy rhythm game, when I think of something like Fashion Dreamer, which is literally designing your own clothing line and running that business, yes, that may be aimed at a non-gamer demographic, but there is a big overlap. So for someone like me, who plays Dynasty Warriors on the hardest difficulties and who loved Elden Ring, I also want to make my Cold Knights clothing line. I also want to play a hairdresser game. And I think that they're brilliant in getting those little puzzle games, slice of life games, and cozy games and aiming them at their intended target, but also getting some splash damage on your hardcore gamers. And I think that's a wonderful business tactic. And that's just one of the many that I've seen them pull off. So I kind of want to throw it over to you guys, and we'll kind of start with Scorpio here. Caesar, what do you think about Nintendo moving into the future? Do you think they can actually win this console war? And what do you think about some of their tactics?
Well, I feel like they've already won. I mean, just going by the numbers, but just something about Nintendo, like, for the record, that fashion designer game, when that popped up on the direct, my wife squealed like a banshee.
Me too.
Like if I recorded that our reactions, it would have probably cut the audio because of how loud she screamed. She's a huge Style Savvy fan, and she's been waiting for a new one. So when she saw the announcement, she absolutely flipped, and now I have to pre-order it for her. So whenever that comes out, but like in terms of the future for Nintendo, I feel like nobody quite gets gamers hyped like Nintendo does. I mean, look at the directs that they do. People like are posting about rumors of the next direct and what Nintendo has planned. You don't see that kind of hype with Sony, and you definitely don't see it with Microsoft.
Hell, it contributed to the breaking of Twitter that day.
Yeah, I was trying to post about the freaking direct, and I couldn't. I thought something was wrong, and I was losing my proverbial shit because there were so many like announcements. Like Jay, I know you felt it was disappointing, but me personally, that direct, I went in with really low expectations, and I came out full. Like if I just had like a 3-course meal, you know what I'm saying? Like I was hyped. Like my wife was laughing at me because I told her to stop screaming at this fashion game, but I was the one screaming when Metroid Prime Remaster was announced and Shadow dropped. You know what I'm saying? Like Nintendo needs to keep doing what they're doing. Do they need new hardware? It's debatable. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody says that, oh, a new Switch is needed. But you know, as Andy B likes to point out, look at the sales on the Switch. They really don't need another successor anytime soon.
Well, I also want to build upon your point there. I'll simply pose a question. Do you remember what Sony announced at their last State of Play?
I never even watched it.
Do you even know what Xbox show is called?
No, did Xbox even have a show?
I don't even know. I think they have one. I don't know what it's called though.
No, I don't.
What is it called, Mongunzoo? You must know.
Oh, I don't. I don't pay attention to economic Icaruses. I don't pay attention to economic Birdmen.
So yeah, I completely agree. They have weaponized the Nintendo Direct. They know who to aim it at.
It's amazing that all these years later, Nintendo still has us by the balls. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, people like to crap on Nintendo, and sure, Nintendo isn't perfect. Like, yeah, they send cease and desist letters to people who try to use their IPs for a fan game or something, but nobody gets people hyped for video games like Nintendo does. And that's something I always have to respect them for, because they could announce tomorrow a new Punch-Out, and everybody's gonna lose their shit. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, don't forget that the day of the direct, they gave me a DMCA strike for posting those Mario figures, and I was very cross. But then when I saw Samba de Amigo, it made it all better.
exactly. You see, they just know how to like butter us up, and I don't know. Nintendo's just on another level. No pun intended.
For sure. So, Mongunzoo, I know that this is one of your passions. Tell us what Nintendo is doing here and the genius of it.
Oh gosh, where should I start? I guess we can start with the direct since that's what we're discussing. I guess the first thing I'll mention to you guys though, Scorpio, you obviously haven't been reading what the video game analysts and video game journals have been saying. So I mean, surely you're aware that the Switch is doomed. Switch can't compete. Need a Switch Pro. Need a Switch 2. I mean, surely you've read the articles. You've read what the game journals are saying, right? I mean,
initially I used to agree with them. I used to say the Switch is underpowered, it's not good enough, and then I look at my Switch collection and it completely trumps my PS4 or Xbox One collection, and I'm like, yeah.
Well, and you can be forgiven for disagreeing with that, because if you say something long enough and emphasize it hard enough, and it comes from a place of authority, and you have social proof around it, that's going to be a very psychologically compelling thing. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're attempting to gaslight Nintendo into bad business decisions. Nintendo, again, is made up of human beings who have the same cognitive vulnerabilities we all have, which brings me to the Nintendo Direct. Because, oh my gosh, you're talking about, when you say weaponization, most folks, when they say that, they don't even understand just how emphasized that is. So let me try to paint a picture, of at least on the Nintendo Direct aspect. You have the following elements of persuasion and influence at play here. If you've ever, there's a book called Influence by Robert Cialdini. Guys should check it out. Really cool book. But you've got scarcity. Number one, you don't get very many of these a year. So you've got scarcity at play. You've got consistency at play. You've got people have an internal desire to be consistent with our past actions. So if we've been hyped for a direct before, it's consistent with our past actions to be hyped with a direct now. They know that. They emphasize that. You've got authority. You often got executives and game developers literally showcasing the shows. So you've got authority at play. Social proof in spades. You've got the entire internet talking about the Nintendo Direct to the point where it literally breaks social media. You've got liking. You've got the liking principle. Which essentially, because of all the good, positive brands that are there, you're literally firing on just about every weapon of influence that Cialdini outlined in that seminal book. So the Nintendo Direct is just a great example of Nintendo not only knowing their product and knowing their customer, but utilizing and firing on all cylinders with what I consider a persuasion atomic bomb right at their consciousness and in their cognitive vulnerabilities. It is not fair. It is not a fair fight by any means. It is fantastic just how in sync with their customer they are. The second thing I want to bring up is the fact that you've got other aspects of their business acumen in there. So there's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy by Kim. Are you guys familiar with this?
I am not.
So essentially what the Blue Ocean is Blue Ocean Strategy is, instead of staying in the Red Ocean is what they call it, where all there's blood in the water from all the infighting, Sony, Microsoft. Blue Ocean says that there's customers you don't know about, there's customers that you're not serving, and there's customers that your broader industry is refusing or unwilling to serve. People like your wife who wants that designer game. People like Jay, who might like the Nintendogs game. Those are all things, and Nintendo knows that. They know that. Bring back Nintendogs. I'm just going to say that as well. But long story short, so they've got that going on. They've got the Blue Ocean Strategy where they're going after customers that are ignored. I'll give you another huge group. People like me, lapsed gamers who literally got out of this hobby in terms of console gaming for over a decade. Switch brought me back in, first time since the Wii. I literally sat out an entire console generation. I sat out 2 before that. Switch brought me back in. On top of that, they're also doing some disruptive innovation. There's a book by Clayton Christensen called The Innovator's Dilemma, and the Nintendo Switch does that. To put simply, disruptive innovation is a quote-unquote crappy product for a quote-unquote crappy customer. Crappy is emphasized because what crappy is not saying that you're a crappy customer. It's not saying that the product is actually crappy. This is from the perspective of the larger industry. So the industry sees a underpowered, undercooked device like the Switch, and they thumb their nose at it. They see the customers that the Switch is going for, and they thumb their nose at those customers. What they don't realize is those customers have money. Those customers have wants and desires, just like their hardcore gamer constituents. And by not utilizing them, they're leaving money on the table for Nintendo to just look around. Hey, anybody going to take this money? There's literally money sitting right there, guys. Hey, free money. Nobody's going to take it? Okay. And they pick the money up. So I think the Switch is doing a fantastic job. It hasn't even had a price cut yet. Keep that in mind. 6 years, no price cut. When that price cut hits, oh my goodness, are you going to see sales momentum just floor? And it's coming. I would expect it probably within 1 or 2 years that price cut's going to hit. Yeah, it's at this point I fully expect it to surpass the PlayStation 2. It's a marvelous device. It curates some of the best games throughout generations of gaming. Another strong point I always mention is the fact that for lapsed gamers like myself, a lot of these games that they've curated are brand new to me. Brand new. Never got to play BioShock back in its heyday. Get to try it now. Outside of like going over to a friend's house, I get to finish BioShock, get to finish BioShock Infinite. So even the third-party games, which are starting to dry up as the third-party cartel starts to really try to put the hurt on Switch, you're going to see less of those. But the games they got, I mean, aside from a few ones that I can think of, Grand Theft Auto 5, things of that nature, the Switch got what it needed out of the third parties. It doesn't need them. And it should just continue on the path it's continuing and try to ignore the industry, the entire industry, collectively trying to gaslight it into a bad business decision. But I'll throw it over to you guys. I've talked enough.
So I'll make another point, and it kind of touches on that blue ocean theory. And oddly enough, with Engage, the blue and red theme. Engage, if you guys have seen my review on it, one of the things I really highlighted was the ensemble cast. And we're talking about a fan base and customers that the other companies will thumb their nose up at. So let's look at the cast of characters in Fire Emblem Engage. So we'll take a look first at the first one that comes to mind, right? Saphir is a like 55-year-old black woman who is a veteran knight, all right?
Mm-hmm.
How many games have you seen that have a character that is a 55-year-old black woman? Honest answer. Have you guys seen that?
I'm thinking.
How many games have you seen that had a femboy knight, Rosado, front and center in their advertising for a game? I actually can't think of any. Not even like anime games. Like, I can't think of it.
On that one, though, now I think about it, I can think of an elderly black woman, not as a knight, but Pokemon Scarlet also did that. So Nintendo, once again.
Yeah, right, exactly. You know, when I look at that cast of characters, and then you have your traditional tropes. You have a Prince Charming character, an Alfred, who I still stick to this day. I actually believe canonically, if you look at Malier as the canonical lead character, all of the endings, I went through all of them for their bond rings, and that's when you develop a close friendship or a relationship. I would say canonically the most realistic one is him and male Alier. So again, a demographic choice. You have your traditional, you have like a samurai, fearless samurai character in Kagetsu. You have, you know, a like Dami Mami waifu.
Where?
In Ivy, like the characters are so varied that you could have a literal room full of all different people of different colors, ages, sexualities, and genders. and they would all find 2 or 3 characters to closely identify with. And I feel like Sony and Microsoft have never even attempted that. And anything that did, I'd say some of the closest things would be like what is that one? Life is Strange there, or whatever it's called. That was kind of alternative. But that was cross-platform.
And it was indie.
So I honestly see them reaching out to all these different people, and it kind of follows that Blue Ocean thing, and it kind of follows what I was talking about with things that can appeal to hardcore gamers and to non-hardcore gamers. And I just think that it's not only in their innovation, but their marketing is just incredible. And even aside from the directs, when I look at them dropping a game like Engage in January, and I'm already ready to call that the game of the year, that's incredible. And like, I just, I'm not doing another playthrough, but I have a cleared file, and there's not a new game plus, but it marks you as cleared and gives you a whole bunch of bonus items and leaves you off before the final battle. So if you wanted to finish up your, social links, or if you wanted to level people up, you're still free to do that. And I've gone back and I'm now leveling all the characters that I didn't care to do, the child characters, some of the side characters that I didn't find interesting. And I'm having a great time doing their social links and watching videos on YouTube about how to level them up and how their growth works. And so this game has made me go back after I've already spent 80 hours and put more time into it because of this incredible cast. What game has done that? I mean, Elden Ring was great, but it's apples and oranges. They're definitely not the same thing. Elden Ring wasn't great because of an ensemble cast. It was great because of the world that it foretold, the world that it immersed you in. Engage is a very linear experience. There's no open world at all. And it's literally on like a track. The map is literally a track. And I felt just as immersed in that as I did Elden Ring. So as much as we were talking about needing to have like Tears of the Kingdom follow that Elden Ring path, when I look at something like Engage, it is the furthest thing from Elden Ring. You have the choice to grind, and you have the choice to do the side stuff in that Somniel, that hub area, but there is no branching paths. It is all 100% linear, and it is just as immersive as Elden Ring was. So it's not just in their marketing, but in the fact that they can design a game that is that linear and that straightforward and have it feel as immersive as Elden Ring. And I very much felt the same way about Xenoblade Chronicles 3. These games have average to slightly above average graphics, but their stories and their casts and the combat systems in them offer so much that they don't need to be fully open world to match the quality of something like Elden Ring. So when I just look at those two titles, I don't know how anyone can compete at all. Forget all the logistics and the business side of it. If they keep putting games like that out, how can the other two compete at all? When I look at Sony, what does Sony have? Horizon? Really? That's not going to cut it. It's not that good. So I mean, Xbox is at the point where I think it's just going to become a service.
Yeah.
They might as well just bow out. So when I really look at the competition that's left, I mean, the Xbox and Microsoft might do a little more damage to Sony before the fighting's over, but Sony is going to win that. And Nintendo is going to just walk it in for the touchdown, because Sony's going to have their legs blown off and they're going to be crawling towards the goal line while Nintendo just kind of walks it in. That's how I see it happening. What do you guys think?
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know how Microsoft and Sony compete. Largely, they just have nothing that I desire. It's not no shade on them. It's just they don't have the products that I want typically. Not to say that they don't make great games from time, but as you pointed out, who is your product? or what is your product? Who is your customer? Nintendo Switch nails that. They nail that. Now Nintendo doesn't always nail it, but the Switch has hit it out of the ballpark in a way I can't even describe. Microsoft, yeah, it looks like they're going full in on leasing games, literally to the point where they came out and admitted today that they're literally undercutting their own third-party developers. So the third-party cartel that they seem to exist to lick the boots of, they're literally undercutting with the Game Pass, with the leasing of games. Now, to be fair, I think Microsoft did what it set out to do. The entire purpose of Microsoft getting into video game space was to stop Sony from moving upstream into PC gaming and developing computers of their own. So as a shield to Microsoft, I think they actually met that. I at this point, I don't think Sony seems to be content to release their stuff on Steam, which is of course, mostly going to be on Microsoft software. I think they did their goal. Keep in mind, Microsoft has never made a profit. It was literally a shield initiative. Sony continues to take losses. The whole VR2 debacle has just been a disaster for them. The fact that there's no backwards compatibility on those games, I don't know. I don't know how they keep doing this. I don't know how these gamers keep going back to them.
And the crazy thing is, if you had asked me 2 years ago, I would have told you that Nintendo was headed the way of Sega, and I think the other two might be.
And it was. I mean, yeah, the Nintendo Wii was, and again, they listened to the gaslighting. They sunsetted the Wii early, and it was a absolute disaster for them. They thank goodness they had the portable market, because the portable market buoyed them through what otherwise would have been a really hard time for Nintendo and the Wii U.
And the thing is that Nintendo seems to get along fairly well with the PC gaming crowd. So I think when all the dust settles here, and this could be 5 or 10 years down the line, I think you're going to have PC Master Race, and Nintendo is still going to run the video game industry.
Well, yeah, I mean, it has, if you think about it, what if you have a PC for PC gamers, which, I always jokingly call them the HD twins, the PS3 and the 360. Now these are the super HD twins with the PS4 and the, what do the HD twins really have to offer that you can't get on PC? I mean, even the exclusive games are starting to come to PC. I mean, you want to play God of War Ragnarok, wait a few years, it'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
Everything Microsoft puts out will be there. What do they have to offer? What do they have to offer? They're basically a dumbed down PC connected to a television.
Yeah, I remember my wife for the longest time. Nintendo Switch games work marvelously with PCs. For the longest time, there was like some kind of, I don't know what the hell she was doing, but there was some kind of like a back door where you could literally download the files from Nintendo. Like, I don't remember what it was. I'd have to ask her again. But I remember that she played almost all of Breath of the Wild through her MSI. And
wow,
it was beautiful. And yeah, especially if, could you imagine if Nintendo somehow got into cahoots with Steam? Could you imagine that? That would close the book.
Oh gosh, yeah. Oh yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't see much wiggle room for Sony and Microsoft. What do you think, Scorpio? Do you think that they can make a comeback? Do you see any signs of life in their future?
I see, listen, most of the creativity when it came to video games ended after the 6th, 7th generation. Everything now just feels like more of the same when it comes to Microsoft and Sony. They got their hot, big blockbuster games and amazing cinematics, but that can only take you so far. Xbox, I don't know. It's a shame because I loved the original Xbox. I really did love the 360, but that was it. They've been going downhill ever since, and it doesn't seem like they're focused on owning the console market. It's all about a service, and that's where they're going in the future. Sony, they're sticking to their guns, but again, it's like you guys were saying, it's only a matter of time before most of their games are also on PC. I really don't see a future for these consoles moving forward. Nintendo, however, they've always had the handheld market. You know what so with the Switch and hopefully the Switch successor, they will always have that portability aspect, hopefully, and console aspect mixed together, the perfect hybrid, as I always called it. And I always felt like that's like the true evolution, and all the creativity is in games like Fire Emblem Engage, Xenoblade Chronicles, you know what I mean? All these games that have been coming out from the directs, you see it here and there. Most of Sega's like IPs that you'll see, like Samba de Amigo, another classic from the sixth generation, is coming back, but it's not going to be on Switch. I don't think it's coming to anything else.
Yeah.
I just, it's sad because I've always been a console guy, but I can definitely see like the writings on the wall. I don't see the consoles being much of a thing in like 10 years.
So that was kind of the last question I was going to get to here as we're kind of winding down on time. Do either of you think that Nintendo will continue with this hybridization of handheld and console, or do you think they might actually try to make a high-powered console?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it goes against their entire business ethos. Again, if you read Blue Ocean Strategy, if you read The Innovator's Dilemma, two books that Reggie was talking about during the Wii era, it's kind of underpinned a lot of what Nintendo has been trying to do. And keep in mind how very risky it was. They put all their eggs in one basket when they did the Switch. Very well could have sunk them if it would have failed. With no dedicated handheld to buoy this project, it was a real risk. But it paid off, and yeah, I don't see it going anywhere. The only thing they could do to sabotage themselves would be if they somehow avoided backwards compatibility or started pushing like the digital only future. If they do that, I'm out. I'll take my eggs and go home. I've got gaming retirement sitting behind me. But other than that, I think they're good.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think, Scorp?
I agree 100%. If they don't stick with this hybrid model that they have, I mean, like I said, they have always owned the portable market. And in the console market, there were always hits or misses with Nintendo, but this is the perfect hybrid. It's like the perfect organism, to quote Alien. You know what I'm saying?
Good reference.
They need to stick with this model moving forward and just expand on it, make it a little more powerful, as you know, and keep backwards compatibility. And judging from the reports on the hardware and what they're using, I don't see them not having backwards compatibility, especially with how much the Switch has been selling.
Yeah, for sure. So to close out here, my conclusion is what we were talking about here. I think for me personally, the reason I switched and that my PS5 is sitting gathering dust on my desk is that I can play the Switch in my bed. I can play it on the couch that's just a little too far away from the TV. I don't even take it out, but it is that perfect hybrid. And you can play it on the toilet, in your bed, on the couch, in the car, on the bus, anywhere. But you can also hook it up to that dock and have a delightful time on your TV with your friends. And that's what it's all about. The Switch offers the most fun and the most enjoyment, and that is why Nintendo is winning the console war. So I thank both of you for coming on tonight. It was great having you, and I am sure we'll all be on again. So thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for having me on.
Listeners,
yeah, appreciate it.
Once again, thank you for listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, stay creepy.
Stay creepy.